Hey, it's JD here, and I just wanted to stop by off the top of this episode, number 3 in a series of water cooler episodes. We changed things up a little for this, and as a result, we wound up with some technical difficulties that we could not rectify. That being said, here is the episode on Garrett Morris in its completion. Mind the echo. Hey, it's time to gather around the water cooler to talk the SNL Hall of Fame. Hey, it's JD here, and welcome to the SNL Hall of Fame water cooler. I am JD, and I'm thrilled to be here with you this week and every week. But I'm more excited to be hanging out with Joe and Shari because they've done such a great job the last few weeks. So, Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm actually pretty darn good. The sky is blue and there's clouds. I took the dogs to the beach today for a nice walk. So it's been a good time.
Okay.
Shari,
Hello.
how about you?
I'm doing really well, thanks.
Are you ready to talk about Saturday Night Live, guys?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We got a great subject this week.
We do have a good subject. We are talking all about Garrett Morris.
Yes.
Shari, do you want to start with a brief recap of the actual episode?
Oh, certainly. It was a fun one. Thomas was joined by the fabulous Darren Patterson from the podcast SNL Nerds, which, if you haven't listened to it out there in SNL podcast land, it is a fabulous podcast. They break down episodes of Saturday Night Live, and in the summer and during the off times, they do movies and other topics. They just did a great interview with a crew member who does one of the film units. So really excited to have Darren, and Darren is a fountain of knowledge, and he's bringing that knowledge to discuss Garrett and making a lot of good points about Garrett's involvement in the show, how he was often a little bit taken for granted, but he was very much an in the clutch player. And I think Darren makes a very good case, and Thomas backs him right up, adding that Garrett's also one of the very best singers of all of the SNL cast.
I learned that from the podcast.
Yeah, I wasn't really aware of that either.
Oh, he's a fantastic singer. I actually watched the episode that he was most known for, where he sang a song, and he's incredible. I mean, he's an operatic Juilliard-trained singer, and you can hear it.
Wow.
So that's the episode, and it was a good one. And Darren made a lot of great points, as did Thomas, as always.
Joe, what do you think of Garrett Morris as a whole? Do you think he's somebody who is
now anyone who's in that first 5 years, I feel deserves at least special consideration for being in the Hall of Fame. And especially since Garrett was in all 5 years of the first 5. And the thing is, you'll hear this a lot. It was mentioned on the podcast, and you'll hear it today. He was very underused. Now, I just want to also point out that he was in all 5 years. However, Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, they weren't. They left before season 5.
That's right.
But they each got best of DVDs. So, and Garrett did not. So that just shows you how underused. And I feel like people, when you go out and vote, I really suggest that you give him a second look, because I believe he really is talented and underappreciated.
It's interesting to think of somebody being underappreciated and yet part of that pioneering first cast. That's very interesting to me, especially because he stood out. he stood out because the rest of the cast was very white, and he was not. And a lot of the jokes and themes of his sketches were racially charged in a great way.
Yes, agreed.
In an appropriate way.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know that you could do it now. There'd be too much sensitivity, I think. But it was hard hitting at the time for sure.
I mean,
it was something worth addressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the White Guilt Relief Fund that I know they mentioned.
Oh my God.
And I watched that a couple of times. It's unfortunately edited way down, and it's not that long to begin with. But the part I saw was just, it's a riot. And that was really, really edgy for 70, was it 77?
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't talking about that kind of, they weren't talking about
it was a hot topic when Saturday Night Live started.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's just worth mentioning that he had to tackle a subject that was very taboo, and he had to do it pretty much, I don't want to say all by himself, I'm sure he had other writers, but he was the only one to represent the show. Like, there wasn't any other African-American cast members. It was just him, and he had to tackle a very hot-button issue.
I don't even know, and this would be something, if you know this, send us an email, snlhofwatercooler@gmail.com, and let us know if Shari or Joe, you know this, like, let me know. But I don't know that there were any African American or any minorities as part of the writing staff.
I'm pretty positive there was not.
So he would have been somebody looking for his own. He would have been somebody looking for his own voice, you know.
And not only that, JD, but he was also, as they brought up in the podcast, and as it's been brought up, anyone talking about Garrett on the show, he was many years older than all of them. Yeah. And he was the only one who wasn't from a stand-up or an improv background.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Which they also talked about, Darren and Thomas also talked about. He was a straight-up actor and musician. He'd come off the Belafonte Singers, and Lauren was interested in him because of his playwright experience, apparently, which I didn't realize. I learned that on the podcast because, Thomas does his homework.
Having that background is unique for Saturday Night Live just in general. That's very unique. Usually you come from Second City, Groundlings, stand-up, and I know it's very rare not to come from one of those.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see a list of people that are, and I suspect it would be very short.
A pie graph.
Pie graph, yeah.
I mean, it would be a very thin slice.
Yeah, when I hear, because I listen to Fly on the Wall, which I'm sure a lot of our other listeners do, and they talk a lot about how it was pretty divided between improv and stand-up, with the bulk being improv. I haven't heard them discuss any that had like theater or serious acting background. They all came from one of the two comedy tracks, so that makes him very unique.
If I were to guess, I would say that like Michael McKean or maybe Robert Downey Jr. But
True.
Like
the whole season 11 cast.
It wouldn't be a long list.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I like that Thomas and Darren talking about how he may be the best singer. Because there's some strong singers that have been on the show. Like I think of Chloe Trost right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Garrett blows her away.
Another list is John Lovitz.
John is great too.
Singer, but I don't want to get off topic.
But Garrett is a classically trained operatic singer.
That's nuts.
He went to freaking Juilliard. It's crazy.
Yeah. And like opera and comedy, those can go together. I mean, if Bugs Bunny has taught me anything, it's that opera and comedy is funny, and they could have used that in multiple ways.
Well, tell us.
Like opera, they could have tackled news stories. They could have been a Weekend Update character is like Opera Man. I mean.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I mean,
Garrett
right
could have
there.
actually sang opera.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, where you got an opera singer, and you got Adam Sandler who did it ironically, or you could, I mean, he could have just sang funny songs. I mean, look at Weird Al. I mean, that's a whole genre is like a funny song. And you have this classically trained singer, and that could have been a whole segment. That could have been his recurring character.
Yeah, I agree. Would be
And yeah,
amazing.
so basically the whole theme of Garrett Morris or this episode is how underappreciated he was. And yeah, if you listen to the other podcasts, they pretty much list the best of, if not like pretty much the best of everything that he did. And right there, that should, if you're going to vote for him, it should be off of those. And like even with the douchebag skit
Yeah.
or sketch, I got it written on my hand. He only had one line in it, and he delivered it on a bullseye.
Yes.
So you have this whole grand finale sketch where you got all the cast members, you got Harry Shearer, Bill Murray, everyone doing the last sketch of the last 5 years, and they only give Garrett Morris one line, and I'll be damned if it's the most memorable line. And not only that, that's the one they always use in the clip shows of like all the anniversary shows.
Yes, I agree. And that is the point that Darren and Thomas made. Even though he's not on screen as much and he doesn't have as many lines, when he has a line or he has a bit, it is very memorable. Like we're talking about him now, and that was 50 years ago almost. So
50 years ago. Yeah,
yeah,
coming up.
he was
October
definitely
11th.
memorable.
Yeah.
And then also in that superhero sketch, he played Ant-Man, didn't have that much lines, but was memorable enough for them to reference it in the Paul Rudd movie. So even though he had like just a couple lines, it was like, oh wait, yeah, that's right. Garrett Morris played him back in the 70s. He probably had 3 lines, and it was memorable enough to be in a Marvel movie.
That's hilarious.
So I mean, he's a scene stealer.
Yeah, and his new president of the New York School for the Hard of Hearing.
No,
That's in every clip show they do. It's so funny. Again, you can't really find a lot of his most memorable stuff online, and I could only find one of those. So I wish I'd been able to watch more. I was just saying I wish I'd been able to find more of those Hard of Hearing sketches or bits on Weekend Update because they were so funny, but I could only find one.
You guys have Peacock, right?
Absolutely.
I don't.
See, we don't have Peacock in Canada.
Oh.
So I don't have access to, just dial back into I've got a whole bunch on my hard drive, but there's a lot of them that are dud episodes.
Right.
Character is so memorable that they did it verbatim with Garrett Morris on Family Guy.
Really?
Yeah, they had him come on and do that. Like that's how memorable that character or that sketch was.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It really has permeated pop culture in a way that not every star or performer on the original cast did necessarily.
Here's another way he was remembered. I just came up with this off the top of my head. Robert Smigel for the 25th anniversary show. He did a joke about how Lorne Michaels was making merchandise based on the show. He had the Dennis Miller talking doll. He had Conehead suppositories. And then he also had, I forgot the character's name, but Very, Very Good Drink.
Chico Escuela.
Chico Escuela, Very, Very Good Drink. So, again, another character that wasn't used that much, but was memorable enough to be referenced in the 25th anniversary cartoon.
Wow.
So there you go.
I mean, they mentioned him. Darren mentions him as an unsung hero.
I agree.
And
100%.
Right? Yeah.
in the documentary, the Saturday Night Live, the first 5 years, even Al Franken said that like he saw Garrett in a sketch performing, and while Al Franken was on stage watching Garrett perform, Al Franken was having this realization, like, "Oh my God, we should have used this guy more." This is like year 4. I just had this realization now.
Are you joking?
In the documentary. I mean, I remember it was Al Franken that said it. It was the show. I forget which basketball player, but the sketch was the basketball player, the host, was sneaking around playing on a basketball team, and Garrett Morris played his mom, and he was playing this mom character so well that Al Franken had a realization that like this guy's good, and I'm realizing this in year 4.
I'm telling you, a big part of it would have been that he would have been writing for himself.
Right. There was nobody.
And sorry, Shari.
No, you're absolutely right, JD. He was there on his own, and they talk a lot about how important it is for cast members to find a writer who gets them.
Yeah.
And Garrett didn't have that. There was nobody who exactly got him, both because of his age, because of his race, obviously, and because he was coming from a less comedic background. And nobody could hook into that. But imagine if they could have hooked into that. Imagine if Franken had realized the things that could have happened. They could have done some really amazing things.
I think so too.
And plus, it seemed like people paired up better, or they didn't pair up with him. Like, obviously, Akroyd and Belushi paired up. The girls kind of lumped together. And Akroyd and Curtin did stuff on Weekend Update. And it's worth pointing out that Garrett wasn't an update host. I think everyone else was, except for Belushi, but not him.
And
he probably would have paired up better if he was an update host with someone.
I also find it interesting, speaking of Jane and Lorraine, I also find it interesting that Jane got him first ballot, because I was looking at our current Hall of Fame, who's already in, and I thought it was interesting that the 3 that I feel get at the case made that they were underutilized are Jane, Lorraine, and Garrett.
That's right.
And Jane got him first ballot, which I was amazed because I voted for her, but I didn't. She's not as well known for being on SNL as Belushi or Akroyd or Murray.
Right.
So I was happy to see her get in. I'm very sad that Lorraine's still not in. And I fear that Garrett's going to have that same fate because people, as I said, have kind of short memories. And
hopefully, if they're listening to this, I really urge you to look at his stuff and vote for him if you truly believe he does. But I really want to urge people to vote for him, and I want to campaign for him because he really was talented. And even though he didn't have that much stuff, the stuff that he did have is worthy of everyone else that's already in there.
100% agree. And I also want to suggest something to you two and to anybody, any listener out there. I found his ceremony for getting his star on the Hall of Fame, the Hollywood Walk of Fame, rather.
Yeah.
And it's very basic. Like, I love how bare bones it is. They're in a little shelter because it was raining. And they're just on the Hollywood Walk of Fame having this ceremony. It's not fancy. There's not a lot of fancy camera work. And Garrett gives like a 20-minute speech about his career. And it's fascinating stuff. It's really fascinating. I didn't know how much he had done. And he talks a lot about his beginnings, how he was homeless for some time. So I really urge people to check that out to get a full picture of this gentleman's career, because it is really pretty amazing.
The burden of voting is a lot. You know, you're sort of expected to have listened to the nomination episodes and then now you're listening to Water Cooler, where we're going to remind you even more. And it's interesting. Shari, you mentioned Lorraine. She last year was her first year on the ballot, and she got 38%. So using that as an over-under number, where do you think Garrett will land voting wise?
I feel like Garrett's going to be right there with her. Maybe right around 37, 38%. It's going to be real
So right
close.
around the same.
I think so.
How about you, Joe?
I sadly, and this breaks my heart, and I hope I'm wrong, but he might be in the 20% because he's not, recognizable as some of the other people. And, it's harder to research him. And, he just doesn't have that much stuff out there. And I don't want people thinking he should just get in just because he's in the first 5 years. I want him to get in because of the stuff that he did in the first 5 years. But if you're asking me where his percentage is, it's probably going to be low because he doesn't have that much stuff out there.
Do you think it'll be lower than Lorraine then?
It breaks my heart, but if I was going to go above or below Lorraine, it breaks my heart, but I'm probably going to say below. It breaks my heart, though.
I think he's a little above Lorraine because he's been in the public eye and people know him more, where she's not been in a lot of things.
No, she hasn't really.
And he's been around, so people know him. People watch Two Broke Girls. People have watched some of his stuff. So I think he's going to at least be the same or a tiny bit higher.
Well, I wonder how much influence the fact that it's the 50th anniversary this year and will be, whether or not they revisit previous things on the show. There's going to be the 50th anniversary show. I suspect it's going to be with the movie. It's going to be more in people's minds. So I wonder if that'll have any impact on voting.
That's a worthy point, and it probably will on some people. And hopefully it'll have an impact on Garrett.
That's what I mean, mainly.
Yeah, I agree. No, I'm agreeing with you, yeah.
And I've heard I just read a Rolling Stone article just before I came on with you two, that they had seen it at the Telluride, and it was a bit of a review. And they mentioned Lamorne Morris's performance as Garrett. And it was one of the things they pointed out in the article. So that might give Garrett a little push. That performance is getting a lot of talk. And that may put Garrett back in people's consciousness, which is a great thing.
Then, yeah, maybe he will be equal or above Lorraine.
Oh, that could.
You're starting to sway me.
Well, I wonder what Lorraine will get in terms of a bump this year.
Right.
Like whether she'll go down or up.
I feel like I've been hearing more about Lamorne's portrayal than I've heard about. I can't even remember the actress who's doing Lorraine. Lamorne's been getting a lot of positive buzz, and I've heard he just nails it. So,
well, yeah. I've got a ticket to see it at the Toronto International Film Festival.
Oh, so jealous!
Yeah, so we'll definitely talk about it
because he's going to take me, right?
If you can get up here, I'll take you. I got an extra ticket.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, Shari's like in Michigan, so she's got a head start.
That's true. I'll send my private jet over. I'll send the SNL Hall of Fame jet over.
All right, I'll pack my bag.
Okay. I want to know a little bit more about some of the other candidates that you guys have talked about this year. You've talked about Beck Bennett.
Yeah.
And you've talked about Sherry O'Terry.
Yeah.
Now we're discussing Garrett Morris. So if you had to rank those three, and I'm not saying if you had to, I'm going to say you have to rank those three in terms of their likelihood to get in or get a substantial amount of the vote. And I could tell you, Beck Bennett wasn't on the ballot last year. Never mind. So I can't tell you what he got last year. But
if we were to
Yeah,
rank
I'm
them,
curious. Yeah.
I would say in it, like, if I were to go 1, 2, 3 with, you know, 1 being highest, I would say it would go Shari, Garrett, Beck. Shari is recognizable for having multiple characters. Garrett is recognizable for being first 5 years, among other things. And then Beck Bennett is just newer. So he just hasn't been around as long as the other two.
That's right. Yeah. And he's only been away from the show for a couple years too.
I'm going to disagree there. I think Beck's got the edge because of his recency. Look at how well Kate did. Now, granted, Kate's in a class.
How did Kate not get in?
Yeah, she's very close though. I do think her chances are good this year, but sticking with Beck,
I think you're right.
I think he's got that recency. I think people really like him. I think people are realizing, just like with Bobby, who we're going to talk about in later water cooler episodes, people are realizing how essential these players were to the game now that they're away from it. Because I think we all took Beck and Bobby, maybe not all, but I certainly didn't think about them. But now that I'm watching more and more of their sketches and what a pivotal role they played during their seasons, I think they're both going to do quite well. And I do think it's because they're more recent. And again, people have short memories. So I think it's going to be Beck, Shari, and I think Garrett is going to be, unfortunately.
Okay, I like that reasoning.
You've
Don't
made
agree with it,
mention,
but I like it.
you've made mention, Shari, as well, that you're worried that he doesn't even get the 10%.
Yeah, I am kind of, I am worried. I think I mentioned that with Shari and Garrett too. People have such short memories, and Shari was a long time ago too. But I'm hoping that with the 50th and people rewatching things, like I said, she wasn't on the 40th anniversary. She hasn't been around as much. Beck's not been back yet, but I feel like he's going to be back.
I think you're right. Like,
I
think
feel
he's
like he and
taking some time
Kyle
away.
are gonna sneak their way in, if not in cameos in some way. And yeah, I don't think she's interested in coming back. I think she's kind of moved on with her life, which is, totally her prerogative. But I think that's going to be a big detractor for people when they're voting.
Because I like that point that you made, is that she kind of just came and went, kind of like Jim Brewer, who just came by, did her term, and then moved on and never looked back.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, Jim Brewer, a little bit different. Like, I mean,
Yeah, no, I know.
I don't think people look back as fondly.
Just you want to pick someone from that generation,
right? Well, I think a good comp for Beck might be Will Forte, who was on the list last year, and he ended up with like 63% or something like that.
Will did very well.
Sorry?
Will did very well. I was surprised how well he did, because he is such a controversial. People seem to love or totally not love him.
Yes.
It's a specific type of comedy.
How well he did.
Yeah,
I'm very curious.
Falconer and McGruber are very specific. Either are on board or not.
Well, I think he gets in this year because he was only 3 points away.
Oh, I agree. And I feel like Beck's going to get 63% this year. Very similar to Will.
I would have been somebody who years ago would have consciously not voted for Beck Bennett. But man, did he ever win me over. By the time he left, I remember his last sketch was he did Vin Diesel. It was the 10-1 sketch.
Yes.
And he just nailed it.
Yeah.
And it's Vin Diesel.
Just for trivia, do you know someone else that did Vin Diesel?
I don't.
Horatio Sands.
Really?
And then David Spade hosted.
Vin Diesel.
And I just wanted to point it out because there's two totally different performers.
Oh, yeah.
That's why it sticks out in my head.
So that's how you have them. So that's how you have them ranked. We'll revisit this next week and see once we add a fourth layer. where they fit in. And, we'll sort of revisit this as the season goes on, like we do with your ballots. I'm very curious. You guys talked about your ballots in the first episode. I'm curious, by the time we get to maybe the 5th episode, we'll revisit it and see if anything has changed.
Okay.
Like, Joe, you only used 10 votes. So you've got some room if you wanted.
Works in the DECA system, but I'll look at it again.
Yeah, well, Shari had used all 15, and I believe she said she had 2 that were on the cusp.
Yes, and Garrett was one of those 2, and I really want to put him on my ballot, but so many of the ones on my ballot are ones that don't have much time left, and I don't want them to fall off.
No, we lost a lot last year.
We did, and I have several that are going to go this year because it's their fifth time on the ballot. So I hope they all get in, but I'm not really too hopeful, but who knows?
Well, I think one of the things, we changed the way the ballot looked last year, and we included little factoids, like last chance, that sort of thing. And I think that helped people
I do think that helped.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm so happy Maya and Molly got in, because that would have been it for them.
They were done, right?
Yeah, which would have been a travesty. So I'm very glad.
This year we've got Jack Handy, Dave Grohl, Paul Appel, Candice Bergen, Paul Rudd, that could fall off the ballot.
Voters, we're urging you.
Yeah.
Don't let this happen.
Candice Bergen, 35%. So, yeah.
The original first female 5-timer.
Yes. And
Candice
she still
Bergen,
shows up in cameos, and I guarantee you she'll be at the 50th anniversary. She's such a huge friend of the show.
She's royalty. She's royalty.
Even though she hasn't done any TV shows or movies recently, she still shows up and does her time. I wouldn't be surprised if she showed up on Only Murders, but as far as Saturday Night Live goes, she shows up to acknowledge her place in the 5-timers club.
Yeah.
So yeah, she absolutely does belong in the Hall of Fame.
I really think I'm a big pusher of Jack Handy and Paul Appel as well. So I hope that people remember this, and I'm glad you're adding it to the ballot, JD, to remind people that they're not on forever.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, Paul Rudd looks rough. He's got 17%. I don't know that looks good for him at all. Or no, sorry, he had 12% last year.
Yeah.
So he went from 23 in his first year, and he's dropped. He went from 23 to 17 to 18 to 12. So I don't feel good about him. Candice Bergen fell from 41 to 35. Whereas Paul Appel went from 29 to 41. So there's good news for her.
I'm hoping she gets her name out there more often and gets recognized for her connection to Saturday Night Live.
Paula?
Yeah, because I'm not sure how the great majority of people know what she contributed to the show.
She's been showing up.
She was, very important.
Yeah, and she's been showing up a lot lately. She was in a couple of episodes.
She was in Kristen Wiig's 5-timers sketch.
Oh, that's right.
And she had a great joke where she goes, I wrote here for 5 years, but right now Kristen Wiig's I'm going to play an audience member, and Kristen Wiig's going to pretend not to know me.
She was also in a at least one sketch in the Kate McKinnon. I feel like she was in that singing.
Yeah, I could see that.
I just can't remember the name of it, but they did a big song pre-date, and I believe Paula was in it too. Tampon Farm.
Tampon Farm. Oh, right.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
The Kate with the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, she helped with the cheerleaders. So if you're going to vote for Shari, vote for Paula. She helped with the cheerleaders.
The cheerleaders, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting pretty excited about next week's episode, JD.
Yeah, I think so. We're going back to the host well after talking about 3 cast members. Shari, do you want to share who we're going to be talking about?
You know, they were just talking about him on the Saturday Night Network, which I know we talk about a lot.
Right,
They
that's
were just
right.
talking about him because they're doing that host countdown, and he's quite high on their list.
He was number 10, I think.
Yeah, I believe 10 might be right. 10, 11, he's in the top 12, I believe. Of course, I'm talking about Kylo Ren himself, Mr. Adam Driver.
Mm-hmm.
Again, very recent, but this one I have to say I agree with. He is one of those serious actors like Garrett who does this great comedic turn, becoming a baby on a plane and just
Undercover boss.
Undercover boss. I mean, beep beep. He's got a great couple.
He was
of his
Science Room, which is always great.
So
Where's Cecily and Mikey?
Yes.
Yeah.
So very, very excited to see the case that our guest.
So it's Ashley Bauer will be joining us. And I think that it should be a great episode because there's a lot of meat on that bone.
Oh, yeah. I'm very excited to come back next week with you two and talk all about Adam Driver and what his possibility of getting into the Hall of Fame might be, where he's going to land on those ballots.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on his way to become a 5-timer.
That's right.
So I believe that he could be in the Hall of Fame.
I think so too. I think there's a good chance he's going to be a host in season 50, even though was just on in 49. Other hosts have done back-to-backs, and
John Goodman.
He always
John
has
Mulaney.
projects. I mean, he's always in several movies. He could be appearing in a couple of TV shows these days with streaming. Who knows? Anything goes. So he'll definitely have something to promote.
I would think so. He's always got something on the go.
Or he could just show up and cameo and just be a scene stealer.
That's true.
That's true. I suspect he'll have a part of the 50th anniversary.
Oh, 100%.
I just think
Oh, absolutely.
he's, of the last 10 years, he's one of the most memorable hosts.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
So, he's almost like this generation's JT or
Walken,
or like how they all had different generations they worked with. I love the I'm all out of cash. I'm all out of cash. That's so good.
Oh, yes. That's another one that could have went to Beck Bennett, but that's like a good team effort sketch.
Yeah, that's totally Kyle and Beck.
Very excited.
And then he played that elderly teacher, but we'll talk about this next week.
Yeah,
That's
very
right,
excited to talk next week. It was great fun talking with you both this week, and always the highlight of my week. So very excited for next week's episode, and very excited to listen to next week's episode because I know it's going to be a great one.
Me too.
Absolutely. I love talking to you guys. And I love telling our audience to like and subscribe and do all those fun things with those fun buttons.
Yes, David Spade says, smash that button.
Smash
Just hit
that
it.
button. I will
Get
tell
a
you.
burner phone, listen to this, and smash the button, and then just get another burner phone and just repeat.
That's amazing. Yeah, do that for sure. And again, the email I want to remind you is snlhofwc@gmail.com. So shoot us a mail. We'd love to hear from you. And on behalf of Joe and Shari, this is JD saying stay thirsty. Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler. To connect with Joe and Shari, join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/SNLHOF. To email the cast, write to snlhofwc@gmail.com. Please subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. To podcasts and such.